our community live chats today. And today we are blessed with the presence of our friend Mary Grace. Mary Grace is a licensed massage therapist and Reiki master and flower essence practitioner. And she heads a collaborative called Unwindings in Michigan, where she has a group of practitioners and other healing modalities. She has a wealth of experience on this topic, and we're really, really happy to have her to talk about the intersection and the ways that we can start working and thinking about. For so many of us are hyphenates, right? We have many modalities that we work in, and flower essences and body work are beautiful partners and make a great marriage. And so we wanted to invite Mary. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about this topic.
Thanks.
So, do you want to kind of give us a little bit of a rundown on how you see flower essences and body work fitting together, just to open up the conversation?
Well, it was kind of a natural for me because I'd already integrated flower essences into another um, unlikely career before I started in body work. And I was teaching in an alternative high school situation where we had a lot of damaged adolescents and teenagers. And nothing we were doing was new. Everything was experimental. I'm basically it was the school was run by a bunch of outdated hippies, and we're just trying to figure out a way to get through to the kids. And we found a teacher who was experimenting in mind body spirit based education systems. And that's where I first learned about Rescue Remedy and some of the flower essences. She was also she lived on a farm, and she was also a plant spirit communicator. And so this was kind of like it was kind of easy for me to. She was also somebody who encouraged me to go into body work. And so I could get out of a classroom, so I could do the things that my learning style was the most effective, was the best for me. So that's how I see it, how it happened. And then everything else is kind of serendipitous, how I just built a practice and started seeing that I was, attracting people who really were looking for that emotional release level of body work. So that's what I trained in, or what I got my continuing ed in, and did cranial sacral therapy and a few others that are quite often instigate some sort of emotional response. So, yeah, that's how I started with it.
Yeah, and you've found that I'm sure that when you're working on both levels at once, that you can, do you feel like they hand off, or do you feel like they almost work together as you're working with someone?
Well, I found one of the things is that because I'm a tactile experiential learning style myself, it would get me out of my head and into my body. Most of my own personal healing is in the physical, but it's preverbal. And so much of my own healing I experienced by receiving body work, and then used the flower essences on myself, and to process my infantile fears of needles, as for injections and that kind of thing. So it was medical in nature. And so I think I started with myself as the first client.
That's a really good point about how the body work can help bridge those, like you're saying, those pre-verbal traumas. I know that I, as a practitioner, recommend people to have body work regularly because the essences do one thing, and then we also can always use more support, and that characteristic of, and I'm coming from my experience of having had craniosacral work, is just you feel like you're being held in a way that your nervous system can start to relax and unwind from that very early set point of whatever that trauma might have been. And so that's what you've experienced for the work, the internal work that you've done, and then now you're able to share it with others.
Mhm. And then my first experience with essences as a group was Bach, but I soon had a group of I went to massage school with a group of retired hippies who were either in the middle of their menopausal changes of life, kind of Uranus opposition. No matter what you call it, we were either changing careers or empty nesting or trying to do, and we were doing a lot of group healing, and we it had somebody in the group who was doing Paralandra essences, and her journey into how she learned the essences was more similar to mine. And that was one thing I found was very similar to her experience was similar to mine. So I that was my first experience with them. Not my first training, but my first experience.
Mm. Yeah, it's been a while since I've read Michelle Smallwright's book, but I remember it as being really important to me as I was getting started with essences too. I want to just address that everyone joining, thank you so much for being here with us. We would really love if you have any questions, or if you have something you'd like to contribute to the chat, because I'm betting there's a lot of us in this room who have experience using bodywork and flower essences and have lots to share. So we really welcome contributions. Thank you so much in advance. So feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring you in, or put something in the chat. Mary, what types of essences do you find the most helpful to your integration with bodywork? Are there particular lines you really like to use?
Well, I use the lines that support that, and I was trained. One of the first full trainings I did was in desert alchemy. And so I those were the first ones that I had available to me to use besides the Bach remedies. And then not very much, and that was another time where I was doing some personal healing because I was able. I actually chose Desert Alchemy because the retreat sounded like a lot of fun and I needed it. And since I couldn't find anybody to go with me. I went alone, and that was kind of a new thing for me to do, just to set out into the big world to study flower essences with a bunch of strangers from Brazil. But so it was a transformative time for me. So that was right after I'd started actually opening a practice. But as I got to the actual apply what I'm going to do with this with the essences in the session room. My experience with Ian White and the Australian bush flower essences was transformative in that regard because what he was able to teach was not restricted by the American um, FDA. He could say things. This works on the spleen, or I mean, he could just say those things because in Australia, their FDA is very accepting of homeopathy, and it certainly wasn't England, Adele. So you know, and so his writings and his books and his teaching were very intuitive based, which was good for me because I really see and not diagnose, but come across my process with the client with my hands. I don't see with my eyes or my ears as much as I do with touch.
And how do you like what are the what we're talking about this in these two kind of big terms, but like where does the rubber meet the road? Do you like to bring essences into the actual bodywork session onto your hands? Do you have the client take the essences? I mean, obviously lots of possibilities, but how do you like to do it?
Well, all of the above. I do have studied. I worked for 6 years in a Chinese medicine clinic, so they were constantly sending me things or asking me things, and or we were sharing. I kind of started the retail in their clinic so I could have it available for them. And then in return, I learned a lot of tactile acupressure, Chinese medicine, and Chinese medical diagnosis, which always includes the emotions and a whole form that just sits into it. So yes, I drop it. I have I use a lot of the body maps in my session room, where if I have a little spot on somebody that's just not releasing, we, whip through the book and look up what the spot's all about, and because that's a pretty tough one to memorize. And just kind of like work from there together, work with the client that way. So that's how and then I use a lot of sprays in the treatment room. Uh, Usually I have something diffusing in my treatment room that's kind of dependent on what conditions are going on in the culture. If we're, experiencing tornado, we had tornadoes not long ago. And so there was a lot of post-trauma stabilizer being sprayed, and that kind of thing. Our office turned into a refugee camp because we had two or three people whose homes were without power, at least, if not damaged. So that worked here. So is that where we are?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. There's so many different angles we could go down. I'd be really interested in like a show of thumbs or little hearts or whatever, from folks. Like, have you all played with the Bach flower body maps with this particular book, this information that's out there? Okay, I've got some thumbs. It is interesting, isn't it? It is intriguing to look up those maps, and it can give you a new insight into something that's going on that you would never have thought. And then, but I know so many people who use those and find really amazing results. So looks like we have a lot of people on the call here that have played and tried with that. We have a question from Lori. She says, general question for my own heart. What do you call yourself? What kind of a healer are you? So I can find a Mary Grace here in Sarasota that I can meet in person.
I call myself a massage therapist for the next 6 months. I'm a little bit over the hill on the body work. I never, well, I started when I was in my late 40s. So um, I always knew that technique was going to be far more important to me than deep tissue or something that was physically strenuous. So that's why I gravitated towards craniosacral and some of those kinds of situations. I tell my family when they move out of town, Mom, how do I find somebody that can, do what you do? And I go, good luck. But uh, they, I tell them to start, if they can't find somebody who says they're a spiritual healer or a body worker or a licensed massage therapist. Reiki Master is another good one to look for because it's approved, it's generally accepted, and they might know about it. And they would be more open to eclectic healing. Craniosacral is another good one to look for. But the other place I'd start, you might go to a good health food store. See who are they recommending? I found when I first started my massage practice, I went to everyone in the phone book, or I started to going to get a massage from everyone in the phone book that did not train at the same school that I went to. And just to see what different things were going on out there. I'm curious. Unfortunately, somebody who was a C was ended up being one of my favorite office mates and ended up moving in with me. So I didn't get all the way down to the Z's. I don't know if there were any because just kind of, there were plenty of them. I don't live in that big a town, but there were a couple. We only have two or three health food stores, but um, anyway, that's one way I would try to find somebody is maybe go to a health food store
Mhm. Yeah,
or
that's a good idea. I've met a lot of people in my area through my work with networking, with going to meetings with with different, I mean, I was always part of groups because I'm in sort of an area that's a little more woo, and sounds like you have a pretty good opportunity. But if you can find opportunities to meet other healers in your area, you might find, a good friend, and people that you can trade with or try their sessions and see what you might like. So that's a possibility too, Lori, for you to connect to people in your area. But
I'm
yeah, I like
also
that.
going to I also go to a functional medicine MD, which is a new way of packaging lots of goodies into a traditional medical practice. And when this is a great story because when I ran into I knew who she was, but I did not go to her. And I was kind of looking for a new doctor during the pandemic. I kind of needed a change. And I was at a vendor show, and this girl was eyeing me very, very closely, a young woman eyeing me very closely. And all of a sudden, I went, "Yeah, she's really familiar. I'm looking at, I want to see her, talk to her." And she finally came up to my booth and said, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, "Man, oh my goodness." She was the daughter of one of my first office mates who had grown up, got married, had twins, and was now practicing functional medicine. And I said something about, "Oh man, I thought to call you lots of times." And she said, "Well, come join my practice or be my practice." And they tend to be extremely well versed in not only emotional healing, but where to find the other practitioners. She has a very progressive clinic with acupuncture, and I've spoken at her clinic. So that's where I would recommend you go.
Yeah, beautiful. That's really good. Yeah, people who are there's people who are the natural connectors in any community, and when you can find them, they can link you up to absolutely everybody else. And Pam is asking, what particular essences do you find yourself using the most? If you can answer that question.
Uh, Line or particularly one essence.
It doesn't
Um,
say specifically. So if there
Either
maybe are
one.
some that are always coming up.
I don't really know much homeopathy except I know the principles. I mean the little and I find that there is a for myself and the people that I treat constantly, like my children, grandchildren, family, that just want the ins and outs of the daily thing, that that people present themselves with constitutional remedies. And based on, because I do some astrology, I'm a little esoteric there. I kind of I know what my constitutional mm, personality is like. And so, and because I know bush remedies the best, that's where I go first, is what I find is a constitutional remedy for myself. Um, um, my husband actually had Ian White do a formula for him, and and he takes nothing but, I mean, he what works now for him the best is the Bush version of Rescue Remedy, their emergency essence. Um, I have a couple go-tos. My one of my favorites, if I don't know what else to do, is I go to Blue Elf Viola and let her work her little magic. And then yeah, which is from Alaska. I have a couple of Alaskans that work really well for me. I Someone explained that to me is because I have a lot of earth planets in my astrological constitution, and that Steve Johnson was the only, at the time that I first started, was the only manufacturer who came was an earth sign, and that's why I resonated. It was a friend of someone I met at the Australian Bush classes that she said, "Oh, that's why you resonate with him." It's like you just, so.
Yeah, that's interesting. And there definitely are, lines and people that creators that we do tend to be drawn towards, and the people that you would be drawn towards are the people that are going to be drawn towards you as clients. So it's probably going to be very different for everybody's practice.
Mm.
I know that when I'm working with animals, I'm often looking for, like, for instance, I'm a T-touch practitioner for horses, so I do a type of body work for horses. And if I'm working with a Mustang, I'm going to be looking at the desert alchemy essences, the ones from, that are going to resonate with them, what feel like home, the
Right.
desert. So I'm always kind of trying to think like what would feel like a good match for the individual as you're working with them, and that can be a really helpful thing.
Yeah, I have an Australian client, and what she makes me laugh because some of the Australian bush products, especially the creams, are scented with Australian flowers, and I don't particularly care for their fragrances. I adore the Alaskan fragrances, and I adore yours, Kathleen. They always smell so wonderful to me. But sometimes I open up the tube of some of these. They have one in particular where I like the essence, but I don't. I'm going with the drops on this one. And she says, "Oh, it smells like home." She puts it. She wears it for like a perfume because it's so well. I think she knows why she's taking it besides that. But so yeah, it's kind of matched the person to the how it resonates for you.
Yeah, so incredibly individual, and that's
Mhm.
why, um, yeah, that's so funny how the smell like doesn't resonate for you, but really resonates for her. What an intriguing thing. As we're talking about things that have a little bit of a scent to them, I'm thinking about the really lovely line of infused oils, flower essence infused oils from the Flower Essence Society. I know I use the Dandelion Dynamo quite a bit and the Arnica Allay, I think they call it. They have a number of different ones, and they're just lovely for being able to it's in an oil base, like an olive oil base, and they have the essences infused to them with, I think they infuse flowers into it's wonderful. They smell really good and they feel really good. Have you ever used those, or do you?
Oh, I use them constantly. There, I have a bottle of each one of them. The benediction oil is a little bit more ceremonial, and I don't use that often in the treatment room. But the if I have an actual point from the that's muscular, that is from the Bach map group that I can't get, I'll start off at the dandelion oil. I mean that one is usually a this baby will work on anything. I mean, that's a great tool for that one. And I have a mug, the moontime mugwort for cramping. I have an amazing story of that. I actually was able to assist at my grandson, one of my well, my older grandsons. He's 25 now, so we won't tell him I'm telling this story. Assisted his birth, and the my daughter had been given too much Pitocin to induce labor, and she was having trouble pushing because her legs were cramping so badly. So I massaged her legs while she was in, while the midwives were finally getting her little friend born.
That's a great use and an opportunity to reach for some of these things that you might not have thought of otherwise, to
And
be
her
able to
husband
support.
grabbed the bottle of rescue remedy out of my hand. Yeah, that was,
You've got them well trained.
yeah, I got those kids. I had the right kids.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. And I see that Pam really likes the Dandelion Dynamo. Yeah, there's something about it. I think that, like, like the dandelion flower essence, I'm looking at it from the Chinese medicine perspective. It's like it moves chi, it moves stuck chi in some ways that, and using it topically is going to be moving these areas of stuck chi. And when the chi is stuck, it's very uncomfortable and it hurts. And so being able to apply it in a couple of different ways, maybe taking the essences internally is kind of more of a global use. But if you're using them topically, it's going to be kind of more generalized.
I also have
Nice.
a set of the Australian Bush creams that he blends all of his combinations, not all of them, but some real basic ones in cream form. And I always have those open in my massage room and I use those primarily doing reflexology when I'm working on the feet, and I help the reflex point for a particular place, and then it's like, okay, that's uterus. Let's use women essence because the Australians can say that.
Yeah. And did you mention that you had like a favorite book that helped you learn some of these applications for the Australian essences?
I do. It's let me see if I can get it into my camera. I'm working without my external camera. It's the Australian Bush Flower Essence Healing. It's what it's called. Um, I order from a distributor in South Carolina. It helps you with some of the shipping kinds of things, and since I retail with them, I can get it. The book, it's available there, um, and it gives you all kinds of ways of using it with Chinese medicine, with astrology, with physical ailments. All it's a book of creativity on how to integrate it. Yeah, that's a great one. On my top 10 list, or top five list, because if I found I'm in a storm, I'm only taking five books because they're too heavy and I want to take something else. And my husband probably, but the top five books, probably the number one book for body work that everyone should have, no matter what kind of body flower essence you're doing, is Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life, You Can Heal Your Body. It is a classic. I hope people still learn about it, know about it, but it does a whole lot of it has affirmations for every body part. It has affirmations for individual teeth. I mean, it's and vertebrae. It's just amazing. So if you do follow up with a body work client, I've got the affirmation right there for them. I mean, we don't even have to work on it. We can just open up Louise Hay and say, well, Louise, she says this is about, and then we laugh and then they can process their work with that.
Yeah, it's a nice window for just a possibility. One of the many possibilities for looking at something. Because anytime you have a physical thing, you can get really connected to like it's just a thing. I just want it to go away. Just make it go away for me. And anytime you have an opportunity to open up a possibility of like, well, maybe it's about something else, or maybe you're clenching your teeth because you can't say something, or whatever. And Louise was one of the first people to put out those possibilities for people to think about some of these things that they're experiencing as being a message from their body.
Mhm. Yep. And she was real brave and concise about it. So that's a great book. And I just thank you for Kathleen for introducing me to Loie Kolbeck's Chinese medicine translation, using flower essence in Chinese medicine. Not my 6 years in the acupuncture clinic kind of opened me up to a lot more Chinese medicine than although I did have an acupressure seminar. We had 100 hours of acupressure training in the massage program I was in, so it was very oriented in that direction. But then my follow-up was I did a certificate in Feng Shui. And there you go. Spray the stuff in the air, spray it in your room. Yeah, learn to douse for icky chi, that's what we call it, is icky chi. But that book is lovely for integrating yeah, into that. And so are the Flora of Asia. They're very nice.
Thank you. And we have Pushpa who uses the St. John's wort oil, and I don't think I've ever used that one personally. I don't know if you've used that one from the going back to the FES oils. Is that one that you've used?
I don't use it too much in the treatment room, but I've used it. I mean, I've used it for other things. I mean, more personally or family wise. But yeah. What do you use it for, Pushpa?
Um, I use it for neuropathy
Mm.
because I mean I don't know about from a flower essence point of view, but certainly from a botanical medicine point of view, that would be a go. And hypericum would be what I would always use for any kind of nerve pain, especially in the extremities. So, um, and I always, it brings light into places. That's all I know. I mean, it just brings light in. It's
Yeah,
like the leaves of the hypericum that are, Hypericum perforatum, they're perforated and they let the light through.
that's lovely. And for the record, you're a naturopath, Pushpa?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a naturopathic physician for 25 years.
There you go. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. That's a wonderful contribution. And there was a question from Claudia about the infused oils that we're talking about, and what are you diffusing in your treatment rooms? So it seems like, to clarify, these formulas from the Flower Essence Society, these oils, these are intended to use topically. They are used for massage oils or for, putting on your body, that are not essential oils, that you would be something you'd be using in a diffuser. And Mary, do you want to talk about your practice and how you diffuse and what you do? And
Yes, we're because we're an integrative community of collaborative practitioners. We have one acupuncturist that deals with a lot of fragrance hypersensitivity in her practice. She specializes in allergies, and so we're very careful about fragrances and don't really use much, except on somebody who's going to be leaving. We'll put we might use fragrance on them and say, and now, or go home with this and put this in your, or if I'm packaging something in oil for them to take home, I'll put some lavender or something in it, or, I keep it fairly neutral. But I actually fuse straight flower essences, rescue remedy out of the bottle into the diffuser, and so it's water, it's distilled water. It's not it's whatever my diffuser will take. And don't usually, sometimes I'll use a little lemon or something that's just like smells like pledge or something, so they know it's clean. Makes the room feel clean. That's kind of a nice all around, all purpose scent that people don't notice. But I like to use, but I diffuse the essences per client as they come in, keep the diffuser running.
I love this idea, and so many people have these diffusers sitting around, and they can be used for they can be used for good and evil. I think we've all experienced walking in places and just being hit by a wall of essential oils. It's like, oh, too much. And I love that we can just use these lovely devices that will put out that vibe of the essences without having that additional whammy of the oils. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up because it's really really
And mine
helpful.
lights. Mine has a nice little glowing light to it, so it's kind of effective. Yes.
Yeah, the lava lamp version.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just bring in, at this point, just from working with animals, and it's really interesting how they totally recognize what essences are helpful for them and what aren't. And this isn't essence related story specifically, but this was a horse that I was working with. He's a senior Arabian. He used to be a racehorse, and he had a lot of musculoskeletal issues, and he, just from a lifetime of that hard job. And I was working with him, and he just couldn't settle. And we had him out in an arena, and we were just like he'd take a little bit of touch, and then he'd need to move, and then he'd take a little bit and need to move, and it was, we're walking around the arena, and finally, he could settle, and he was just relaxing, and he was just able to accept touch and really go deep. And then I kind of looked up, and I went, "Oh my God, we had landed underneath a willow tree that was in bloom." And it was like, okay, that makes sense. It's like that quality that the willow tree was emanating was supportive to his, aches and pains, and he was able to really relax underneath it. And, I find that animals get that that's part of what's in that bottle. They don't necessarily need to have a willow tree, but it's handy when you do. But they were able to understand that that energetic is something that's really, really helpful for them.
My
Do you see?
experience with
Hmm?
horses is limited, but I used to have a horse trainer that was a client and was always getting referrals about some remedy, and I said, just why don't we just stick to the Bach remedies, because it's going to be the easiest for me to, you know, say go get a bottle of this or go get a bottle of that. But in return, she offered me a horseback riding lesson to help me overcome my fear of horses. And this horse was very accommodating that she chose, and he got me over the fear of horses because she noticed that he really liked me. For some, he just really liked me, and probably was the flower essence I was wearing or using at the time, I'm sure. And when we were all done with the lesson, she said, I have news for you. You're not afraid of horses. And I said, I'm not? I mean, like news to me. I thought I was. And she goes, no, you're afraid of heights. So I was just on the horse, and I haven't been afraid of horses since. So it was like, thank you, horse. You taught me.
That's a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
But it does bring that character of when we are emanating the flower essences, when we're taking them, when we're engaging with them, when we're putting them on our bodies, everybody around us changes. The animals respond to us differently, people respond to us differently. So for anybody who is a body worker, consider what you're bringing in the room too. That you might be able to support the process of the client's developing trust, of developing that characteristic of being able to accept the body work. I don't know if this is something that you'd like to share on, Mary, but when I was first seeing acupuncturist, I mean, I knew her and I was there and I had made the appointment, and it was like I was all in. But it took a few sessions for me to for my body to trust that the process. And I don't know if you've experienced that or if you've found that essences can help that process of getting the body to relax. The head can be like, sure, let's do this. And the body's like, I don't know.
Um, because not so much with my patients, because they usually come anymore. They have had body work, and they've or I've had them for so long that kind of that trust factor is there. But then occasionally I'll get someone who has to build a trust factor, and usually the way I present is as important as how they present. I have to present as calm and trusting that they're not going to be too judgmental, or that they'll be honest with me, and so that I think is important. Back to your experience, because I know you're the pro with animals, and I admire that a lot. but I early on, I'm pretty good with kids, but I learned to say to people who had an amazing experience taught me to say to people, I will be glad to get something for you, your dog, if you are willing to take it yourself. Because I don't want to do that to the dog. I mean, I'm not I'm I I I want to ask the dog what's wrong with it, not like I would a child. I also do the same thing with young children. Children say under the age of 12, 13. That it's like, you gotta treat mom first, or the family system. You can't just ignore that. But
That's a
but,
really important point. That
mm,
it's not just the individual walking in, and it's never just the individual walking in. It's their environment. It's where they live. It's who they live with. They're bringing all that in, and certainly for a young and sensitive individual, whether it's an animal or a child or whatever, to be able to address that whole story is
my
probably the reason they're there.
My animal experience is actually more with veterinarians, which by coincidence, I have a sister-in-law that's very active in a large veterinary some large veterinary organization, and she somehow or other got me a speaking gig at a veterinary conference on how to use flower essences. And I was terrified because I didn't know, these people have, they're veterinarians for gosh sakes, and how am I going to tell them what to do? And the laws for veterinarians doing stuff like this is crazy in Michigan. I mean, talk about not wanting to, acupuncturists have to have, in order to treat an animal, have to have a veterinary degree. And it's like, seriously? So I'm talking to an international group of veterinarians, and they gave me the last spot in the conference because they knew nobody'd come. Their theme for that year was alternative medicine. That's why they couldn't find anybody else sucker enough to speak. And so they gave me the last spot in the conference because they said, don't worry about it. Nobody ever goes. They sign up for it because you're the last one there, and they just want to fill their card. So I went in kind of, okay, great, this is going to be good. I'll do something real interactive, and made it very light and fluffy. And they had to go get more chairs. It was packed. It was absolutely, this is in 2000, 2001. And the room was absolutely jam-packed. And um, we ran overtime, which everybody wants, nobody runs overtime in the, kind of thing. And I'm just like, well, it's the last session of the day, so nobody's going to be in this room. You can't. So I said, well, if anybody wants to talk to me afterwards, I can do that. And the line formed, and they all want to ask about themselves. They were all going, how do I get over my fear of, like Baba? I mean, a little, it was very, and I actually came home with clients that I saw, that I emailed things to for years. So that was
That's incredible. That's so
yeah.
beautiful. And it's so sweet that they really recognized how much it could help them,
Yeah.
as they help the animals. Oh.
Mhm. If she weren't retired from that job, I'd make sure you got to speak, Kathleen. You would have known what to say.
Oh, that's great. Wow, great story. Pushpa had a question.
Yes, I think I heard Mary Grace either in uh, Rokana or Kathleen's introduction of you, or maybe when you said that you do Reiki. Is that correct?
Correct. Mhm.
Yeah. So I'm interested if there's any particular way that you use flower essences with Reiki. And then this is a second question, which is more general. For people in general, as I'm really interested in um, end of life care, hospice, and I know there's a lot. Well, there's many modalities. I do sound healing also, and I mean, there's just a lot of different things that can be done. But my intuition is there's a lot that can be done with flower essences there. And I know that Flower Essence Services has a couple of things that are formulas that are kind of specific for that. But anything else? So okay, I'll stop adding questions.
Well, I'm a Reiki master teacher, so I incorporate the flower essences in when I teach Reiki. I mean, it's like we don't miss an opportunity to mention them, okay, ever. And and so that's and I do teach some other classes, but I also have other training and other energy healing modalities that is different than Reiki. And I mean, it's not better or worse, it's just different. And so some other traditions and acupressure and Chinese medicine, but um, I I bring it in however it comes in. And I'm pretty, during the pandemic, I got real brave about distance healing and flower essences and telegraphing energies, especially in a group. It just seemed that some of the Reiki old guard traditions around you can't um, you can't attune over, I mean, it's just were traditions that were becoming outmoded, that we all need to be channeling healing energy. And I've taken some liberties with that. I attuned my 13-year-old granddaughter because she was already channeling the energy. I mean, she was already channeling healing energy. She's been doing her own flower essences since she was 7. I mean, picking them with me. And not all of my grandchildren would have. This was I knew she was ready. And so I that's how I feel about Reiki. And that's probably what I will be doing. I won't give that up when I give up my massage license. I'm just going to change my business card. That's my credential. Will soon be Reiki master teacher instead of whatever. I would love to see everybody using flower essences and Reiki without with reckless abandon. Been in it, and you said you were doing it, volunteering, doing using Reiki where?
I didn't say that I was doing that. I just said that that's just the direction I see myself moving.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I started out being a midwife as well as
Mhm.
a naturopathic physician. So that was kind of the beginning of life. And now I'm moving towards, now that I'm 73,
I'm
looking
older.
at looking at midwifing the other end of the spectrum,
Mhm.
so to speak. So that's just something I've started to work with. And I'm actually also in a year-long professional certificate training program in integrated psychedelic studies. So I'm really interested in the use of that
Mhm.
with people at the end of life.
Well, I'm going to address something Adele mentioned in the earlier class about not being able to get certain essences in the Ireland or that you can't import them. And I was working in a volunteer project. It's the reason I actually trained to do the Reiki Master Healing. I wasn't or training was so that I could train volunteers, and I do it at a low cost. They have to pay something, but I will make allowances if they can show me where they're volunteering. I mean, it's just to get volunteers trained that can't afford the training. I don't believe in high level costs for Reiki training. Sincerity of the heart is the payment I want. And so I was working in a program with the Veterans Administration to do it was a research project that a social worker had who was a Reiki master who was doing Reiki on veterans in the outpatient psych clinic who had PTSD. And she was gathering data. It was not the best designed research, so she probably wasn't going to get published. And the pandemic sort of broke a hole in it. But we couldn't use product, and we couldn't talk about anything but Reiki because this was a research project. And but I could come in with things on my hands and use the flower essences in the process. And I do believe that they're so close together. It's that it's good. And we had plants in the room. We can have plants, but we couldn't tell them what they were for.
Yeah. And this brings
But
in
we
a
were
good
actually on
question.
federal government property.
Uh, yeah, it's interesting. Wouldn't it be great to see more research on these things? This brings in a question from the chat. Claudia's asking, can you get more specific as to how you're incorporating flower essences with your Reiki sessions in person or from a distance? Are you actually dropping the essence on the skin, or is the client taking it sublingually, or, question mark?
Yes to all of those. It depends on the client and what their level of exposure to the essences or the Reiki. Many of my clients don't really even, I mean, I don't know when the Reiki's turning on while I'm doing a massage or reflexology. It's not even important to me. I mean, I usually give it respect before I put my hands on anyone, just to say, if you want to help, I'll be glad to take it. But so the flower essences, if I'm going to be doing a formula for somebody out of something, if I'm getting into the Bach maps, let's say, where I'm going to get real specific about what these essences are, I will, engage the client in saying, does this sound like something you could use? Is this something you would like to have and take home? And then they always get it topically. I just take it right from the bottle and throw it in a little bottle. I have little bottles of massage oil, or as in 2020, we had hand sanitizer, little bottles of hand sanitizer that went home with everybody, and with Rescue Remedy in it, and or something. And so yeah, is that addressing what you want? It really is individual to the client, and some of them just progress. I also see astrology clients, and they know they're going to get talked at about the flower essences, because the only reason I learned astrology was so I could have a reason to give them flower essences.
It's so interesting always talking to you because you have so many different modalities you can draw on and all these wonderful things. I want to be like you when I grow up. Um,
Jack of all trades and master of none.
oh no, you seem pretty mastery to me. I'm all on board with everything that you bring. I just wish I lived closer. And Claudia says, yes, thank you. That answered her question. So thank you for that.
The other way, Claudia, that really works for me is that I do retail. I'm in the process of reopening my store from 2020, which got dismantled, and inventory went to zero, and not zero, but old things, and I have a whole lot of things that are expired, and that kind of things that are difficult to work with, but I have that very accessible, and when they pay me for a session of Reiki or massage, they will now be going back to the situation we had before, where they're sitting in a room where the flower essences are stored, and the cash box is there, and I have a lot of combination ready to go. So I focus on that. I find it's easier if I'm going to retail rather than doing this custom blending in those environments. So I would have the post-trauma stabilizers, and like there's a display post-trauma stabilizer, or whatever, and gets top, some certain essence that maybe gets top billing for the week and the special this month. So when they walk out of their session, there's the, little teaser. And I can say, that thing that came up, you really might want to try a little bit of this. So.
Well, it makes so much sense to have that as an offering, because it's like there's stuff you can do in a bodywork session and then they go away, and be able to bridge, like, I would like you to keep taking this to keep, keeping the healing going. I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced, it's like, well, that was the best adjustment ever. And then boom, you go back to sitting in the corner of your sofa in a crunched over position, and all of a sudden your neck kicks up again. Like, the essences are going to help to change those patterns that are causing these things to emerge in the first place.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And a lot of times they don't even care why I told them that one. They will take it just because they felt better from their massage. So if I say, if you took this emergency essence, or my favorite one is a client who's my husband, my best friend's husband, who is sincere about doing his physical therapy for his hip replacement, but he has absolutely no idea. He has no proprioceptive qualities and can't really do them correctly. And he's just a deer, and so we have, snuck him into some flower essences that we can say, this will make it easier for you, or you can, this will help you stay committed to the process of your physical therapy and do your thing, kind of
Well,
thing.
and I'm hearing dogwood really strongly. Like, that would be such a good essence for helping to kind of like reconnect to the body, the proprioceptive ability and the movement.
He's also he was raised on a farm, and so I mean, so the flowers easy if you just tell him what they are, that doesn't phase him. But he's also he loves one that Australia puts out called Solaris, which is for heat and the effects of heat and the reaction to being overheated. Well, so it's good for things like hot flashes, and I mean lots of things, or excess heat in your Chinese medicine way, or those kinds of things. So, and what I do is I put additives in them. I mean, like I said, do you mind if I open your bottle, open it and throw in a few little, tidbits of something else that
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily custom blend. So I'll custom blend his I think you would, like a little bit of something else extra in this one and wink at him and sell him the bottle.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to that. You could have sort of like it's the ready to go version, but then you can also tweak it just a teeny bit. Yeah.
No charge.
Well, very
No charge
generous
for
of you.
tweaking.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up to 2 minutes before the hour. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Mary, do you have a parting thought or a parting idea that you'd like to share with people?
Well, I just think everybody should be a speaker on here because the process of really thinking through what you asked me to speak on was so enriching for me to look back. And you said, because I've always thought of myself as a jack of no trades, and I did not know, I never gave myself credit because I don't have a certificate from any one of the places I've studied, which I did deliberately because I didn't want to be tied into one brand or one. I wanted to be able to get one essence from this guy and one from another guy and see how I did it, or from my backyard, and so it just gave me a better look at it. Helped me heal. I'll give myself more respect for what I do know, which is how to have fun and be of service. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This has been really beautiful. You're getting lots of love in the chat. Thank you so much for being with us, Mary. It's been really cool to hear how you've been integrating these two what seem diverse skill sets, and yet they marry so beautifully. And I hope this has given an opportunity for everyone who's been with us today and who's going to be watching this in the future to realize no walls. You could try all sorts of things and see how it works and be free to experiment, because with flower essences you can never do any harm. So feel free to add it in. Yeah.
If you can do it on federal land and in a public school classroom, you can do it anywhere.
On that note, thank you so much, everyone. And we look forward to you joining us again on another one of these live chats. We really enjoy the interaction and the heart and the community that's coming together over at Flower Essence Studies. We hope you check it all out. And if you haven't joined our mailing list, please do go over to floweressencestudies.com. And to see all the free and wonderful offerings we have lots of free resources and courses on the Bach flowers. And then we also have great ways to support our community. So give us a check out. We look forward to seeing you again all real soon. Bye now.